Houston, we have a problem.
Not that one. That one they made a movie about. The problem you never hear about wasn't the rocket, it was the suit. A moon suit has to do three things. It has to hold pressure, because in a vacuum, the water in your body starts turning to gas. You'd have about 15 seconds before you blacked out. It has to feed you oxygen. And it has to stop you from roasting in sunlight and freezing in shade, seconds apart. NASA could build a rocket with 3 million parts and a drawing for every part. They could not build the pants. The company that finally cracked it had already been thrown off the program. Fired. They made bras. And here's the part most people miss. They did not get invited back. They bought their own plane tickets. A president had promised the whole thing by the end of the decade. May of 1961. Nobody was allowed to miss that deadline. Here's the problem with a spacesuit. It's a balloon. Outside, 0 pressure. Inside, 3.7 pounds per square inch. Pump a balloon up to that and it goes rigid. Push on it. It pushes back. Now climb inside that balloon and go do a job. Kneel down, pick up a rock, stand back up. Every time you close your hand, the glove fights you, all day, in a vacuum, with nobody there to pull you up. Hamilton Standard had the contract, won it in 1962. Hamilton Standard was an aerospace company, so they did what aerospace companies do. They drew it, blueprints, tolerances, machined joints. An engineer was very proud of that drawing. It didn't care what the man inside the suit thought, and they built a suit that fought the man wearing it. Because a spacesuit isn't a machine, it's clothing. You don't draft clothing onto paper. You cut it and you sew it onto a body, one layer at a time. And the people in America who were best at that did not work in aerospace. They worked in a factory in Dover, Delaware that made bras and girdles. That factory had been stretching rubber since 1939. Bathing caps, baby pants, whatever needed to bend and hold its shape. Playtex, the living bra, cross your heart. 1954 if you want the year off the box. Playtex itself was the younger sibling, one of 4 divisions inside a bigger rubber company, split off in 1947. The industrial half of the company had its own name, International Latex Corporation. ILC. Remember those 3 letters. They come back at the end and they're going to annoy you. NASA needed something that could hold pressure and still bend. Turns out that's not rocket science. That's lingerie. So Hamilton brought them in, not as partners, as subcontractors. The engineers would design it. The women would stitch it. 2 years. Then one word ended it. Non-performance. That's the word in the letter. Early 1965. Hamilton Standard fires the bra factory off the moon. And you can see why they didn't get along. Hamilton wanted drawings, part numbers, assemblies, tolerances. ILC's best people didn't read drawings. They read patterns. Their design tools were scissors, masking tape, and a singer you could buy downtown. An aerospace corporation doesn't call that engineering. It calls it sewing. So Hamilton took the moon suit away from them and handed it to B.F. Goodrich, the second company to hold it in 3 years. Now Goodrich wasn't a joke. They'd built the Mercury suits, 10 of them, stitched back in '59, years before anyone in this story had said the word Apollo. But you know them, because they make tires. Somewhere in this story there is a man who signed a memo moving the moon suit from a bra company to a tire company, and then went home and had a nice dinner. Goodrich's whole reign lasted about 3 months, and that should be the end of it. Which leaves exactly one question. How do you get fired off Apollo and end up sewing the only piece of it a man would ever wear? March 1965. NASA has run out of patience with everybody, so they call a fly-off. Not drawings this time, suits, real ones, on real men, tested until something breaks. 2 suits get invited. Hamilton Standard, backed by its parent United Aircraft, the suit itself still sewn by Goodrich, the tire company, and David Clark, who'd been building pressure suits since the war. ILC gets a phone call telling them they're not in it. One call. That was the whole notice. NASA's own official history records what happened next like this. International Latex, informed that it was not being considered in the competition, nevertheless asked permission to submit an entry. Nevertheless asked permission. That is government English for they begged. They paid their own way to Houston. They walked in and they asked to be let back into the fight they had just been thrown out of. NASA said, fine, you've got about 6 weeks. For a spacesuit, 6 weeks isn't a schedule. It's a dare, test day. 3 suits go in the chamber. They pump them up to pressure, and then they make the men work. Kneel, reach, climb, get up off the floor. David Clark's helmet blew clean off. For a device whose entire job is keeping your head attached to an atmosphere, that is not a great look. Hamilton's suit ballooned at the shoulders until the man inside couldn't fit back through the hatch of the lunar module. Picture that. You fly 250,000 miles, you do the walk, you turn around to go home, and you don't fit through your own door. And the bra factory's suit? Their pressure zipper failed. So they flew it back to Delaware, fixed it, flew it back, and it still won, because it bent. 2 defense contractors beaten by a company that made girdles. NASA gave it a name that July, A7L. 2 letters. 1 number nobody outside the industry would ever remember. And now the part nobody says out loud. David Clark made girdles too. Founded in 1935 in Worcester, Massachusetts. Foundation garments, before the Air Force, before the pressure suits. 2 of the 3 suits in that chamber came out of the underwear business. Apparently, the moon has a type. I went home on many a night and cried because I knew I couldn't do it. I was scared. This was a person's life this depended on. That's Anna Lee Minner, one of the women who sewed the suit Armstrong walked in. So what did a bra factory know that a building full of engineers didn't? Nothing. They didn't know anything. They could do something. And it nearly destroyed them. Winning was the easy part. January 1967. Fire on the launch pad. The crew of Apollo 1 is killed, and everything that burns comes out of the spacecraft. The suit gets rebuilt around fireproof cloth. What comes off that factory floor has 21 layers. Hamilton's engineers couldn't draw a single one of them. No machine can hold 21 layers in line, so a woman does, by eye, on a singer, to a tolerance of 1/64 of an inch. Try holding your hand steady to that. That's the width of a pencil line. Miss it, and the whole thing goes back on the table. Pins get counted like ammunition. Handed out at the start of the shift, each woman with her own color, every single one counted back at the end. Because a pin left in the fabric is a hole, and you already know what a hole does to a man in a vacuum. Nobody on that floor would finish that sentence out loud. 1 pin did go missing, inside a prototype. So the plant went out and bought an X-ray machine. They X-rayed the spacesuits. Like luggage. The gloves and the boots needed cloth woven out of metal, $2,000 to $3,000 a yard in 1968 money. A brand new car that year cost about $2,800. So on the top end, they were cutting up a Chevrolet, freehand, with scissors. And the woman running that floor was Eleanor Foraker. A year before she was sewing Armstrong's suit, she was on an assembly line, sewing covers for diapers. 80-hour weeks, 3 years without a single day off, 2 nervous breakdowns. She came back both times. July 1969, a boot comes down in the dust, and the only thing between that man and the vacuum is hand-stitched. 5 more landings would follow. 12 men total would walk the surface in a suit sewn by that floor. And that's where this story usually ends. Roll credits. The women won. Nobody ever asks what winning paid them, so let's ask. November 5th, 1965. NASA announces it will negotiate a contract with International Latex for the suit. Estimated value? $10 million. Same day, same announcement. The backpack, the life support pack, goes to Hamilton Standard. $20 million. The bag was worth twice the suit. And honestly, you can argue that. The backpack is a machine. Pumps, oxygen, radio, cooling. You can price a machine. Nobody knew how to price the other thing. Apollo, all in, cost $25.4 billion, which makes that contract, the one that put the moon suit in ILC's hands, 0.04% of the program. Put it this way, if Apollo were a $100 bill, the moon suit is 4 cents. Then Apollo ends, and the orders stop. The floor that ran 3 shifts runs none. At its peak, 900 people built that suit. A few years later, by the company's own account, you could count what was left of them on one hand. And the company that dressed men for the moon stayed alive by sewing blimps. Sit with that for a second. You're probably already thinking, Fine, but eventually the money came, right? It did. It took 55 years, and it had nothing to do with the moon. 2024. Ingersoll Rand buys the company. About $2.3 billion. Cash. Go and read the press release. It's framed as expanding our presence in life sciences. Inside, biopharma, drug packaging, single-use delivery systems. The word space doesn't appear in it once. And the money went where money goes, to New Mountain Capital, the private equity firm that owned them by then. Eleanor Foraker died in 2011. 13 years before anybody made $2.3 billion out of the company she nearly killed herself for. Nobody stole anything. That's the part that should bother you. NASA is going back to the moon. They still can't build the pants. April 2026. NASA's own Inspector General, in writing. Despite nearly 2 decades of effort, NASA has not completed an upgraded flight-ready suit. Collins Aerospace took the job. And Collins is what Hamilton Standard eventually turned into, the same outfit that fired the seamstresses in the first place. NASA put $37 million in 2024. NASA and Collins pulled the plug together. Collins couldn't keep pace. For that money, the report says, NASA got no hardware. It got drawings. 60 years, and Hamilton's heirs are still bringing NASA drawings. So who's actually sewing the next moon suit? A company in Houston called Axiom. And the outfit they hired to build the outer layer of it is Prada. Yes, that Prada. 60 years, 2 moon suits, both of them out of the garment trade. The moon really does have a type. And on the short list in that same NASA report, there's one more name. ILC Dover. Told you those letters would come back. On the list, not on the job. They weren't invited the first time either. And if you want to know why nobody can just copy the suit that already worked, one of the women who made it answered that a long time ago. No two people sew alike.